Hello, and welcome to this American History podcast entitled A New Kind of War. In the last podcast, we learned about Fort Sumter and how the Civil War officially began. Now that the war is in full swing, there are a number of things that make this war very different from previous wars fought, not only in the United States, but in the world. Let's take a look at some of those things. You will need your 15.2 A New Kind of War podcast notes in order to complete this assignment. You can either do this in digital form or hard copy, depending on what you have been given. One thing that made the Civil War different is that it was quite literally brother fighting brother. You can see here two pictures of brothers who fought on opposite sides of the war. One fought for the Union and the other fought for the Confederacy. This was a very common story among families during the Civil War, especially in the border states like Kentucky and Tennessee. Families were split on what they believed to be the right thing to do. Just as we have discussed with sectionalism, people have a love for the area they lived in rather than the nation as a whole. This plays a big role in how many decide which side to fight on. Perhaps one of the most famous people to state this dilemma was Confederate General Robert E. Lee. He was from Virginia and did not believe in secession, but he felt he could not fight against those who lived in Virginia. His loyalty was stronger for Virginia than for the United States. You can see where families would become divided on who to fight for. Slavery was another issue many were divided on, even in the South. Slavery didn't become a major part of the war until later on. In this way, brother fighting brother, cousin fighting cousin, and sometimes father fighting son made the Civil War unique. The daily life as a soldier was not always very fun. Soldiers were drilling and training in order to become more effective soldiers. If they were in camp, as you can see in this picture, then they were able to drill and train. If they were on the march, then they headed to potential battle. You can see here the drummer boys lined up and practicing. Drummer boys could be as young as 12 years old. Their job was to drum certain beats during battle that would tell the soldiers what they should be doing. Oftentimes, drummer boys were the first to get killed, because then it made it harder for the enemy to communicate with each other in the confusion of battle. The life of a soldier was not a comfortable one. As the war progressed, the Confederate Army did not have the resources to feed, clothe, and equip all of their soldiers. Many of the wounded also died due to lack of medical equipment. The Union Army fared better, but they were able to feed and clothe their army much more efficiently. Okay, here's the first section of your notes. Go ahead and pause this video, copy this down into the right box, and when you're ready to go again, please hit play. A new strategy that was used in the Civil War was called trench warfare. Basically, the army would dig these trenches so they would have a good vantage point to fire on the enemy from, as well as a place to take shelter from incoming enemy fire. This strategy was widely used in the First World War about 60 years later. The Union and the Confederacy were both trying to create a new type of ship. While both their navies still relied on wooden ships, both sides had gambled on building revolutionary ironclad vessels that used steam engines, hulking cannons and armor plating protecting their hulls. The Monitor was small and nimble. The Union was able to manufacture this ironclad vessel. The main deck sat just 18 inches above the waterline. Its armaments were limited to two 11-inch cannon, but they were housed in a revolving turret powered by a steam engine. That means the gun itself could swivel around in a circle so it can fire at any target. The Confederacy's response was the CCS Virginia and was the maritime equivalent of a wrecking ball. This ship was constructed from wood reinforced with a 4-inch thick iron plate. It had a floating battery of 10 cannons, 4 on each side and 1 at both ends. The ship's bow was equipped with a 1,500-pound iron battering ram. Many criticized the functionality and looks of these ironclad ships, but critics were silenced the minute their destructive power was put on display. The battering ram was especially effective. It allowed the CCS Virginia to plow directly into wooden ships, causing those ships to eventually sink. It was a very destructive piece of equipment. Another major advancement in weaponry was the improvement of rifles and a new kind of bullet called the mini-ball. Revolutionary War rifles or muskets were not the most efficient type of gun. They were difficult to load and reload and were not very accurate, even at a close range, and could only fire one bullet at a time. The new rifles could fire multiple shots before needing to reload. The inside of the barrel of the gun had also changed. If you look here, it shows a smooth barrel or smooth bore on the inside. This is what a musket looked like, and it made the bullets inaccurate with any kind of distance. A new technique called rifling was invented. See these grooves that go in a spiral? These grooves put a spin on the bullet, making it very accurate at longer distances. This picture here is a view from the barrel of a rifle. Now this bullet here is called the mini-ball. This bullet combined with this new rifle led to some of the highest casualties seen in modern warfare. The mini-ball was made out of soft lead, which allowed the bullet to flatten or splinter when it hit impact on a human, and would rip through flesh and shatter bones. The combination of the mini-ball and the rifle resulted in deadly accuracy at a much farther distance. This changed the way war was fought as well as future wars. Other technological advancements also contributed to the war effort during the Civil War. Two of these advancements were the railroad and the telegraph. Both North and South had access to railroads, but the North definitely had the advantage over the South. The North had 22,000 miles of track, and the South only had 9,000 miles of track. The railroad allowed the North to move troops and supplies from one place to another much faster than horse and carriage. Because the North had more track, they had more availability on where they could send their troops and supplies. The railroads in the South were not nearly as efficient, though they were used to some extent. The telegraph was also a game changer in the Civil War. This allowed messages to be sent in real time and quickly to any telegraph office. It's not much different than a telephone. The telegraph used wires to send the messages through Morse code. The message would be received then delivered within minutes or hours rather than days waiting for mail. The North again had the advantage. In 1861, there were 4,000 miles of telegraph wire constructed and 1,200 operators trained, giving the North a distinct edge in the war. More than 1 million messages would be sent to and from the battlefield using the telegraph. Okay, new technology affects warfare. Not so short, but very important in the advancement of weaponry and technology. So go ahead and hit pause. When you're done copying this down, hit play. Medical advancements were not as prominent during the Civil War. Even though the weaponry had advanced to become more deadly, medical care continued to be a challenge. You can see in these two pictures examples of field hospitals during the Civil War. Sometimes they would house the wounded in a building if they could find one. Sometimes they would put up tents, and sometimes there was nowhere to put the wounded except on the ground and hope they wouldn't die before someone could help them. The mortality rate during the Civil War was very high. Mortality rate means how many people die. Many men died from their wounds, or they would die from infection and disease while in the hospital. Both the North and South were very short-handed in their hospitals at the beginning of the war, which led to the formation of a nursing corps. Women are often forgotten when it comes to fighting wars. Wars are generally a man's business, and women were expected to stay home and take care of the farm and children. Society considered it inappropriate for women to care for sick and wounded men. The intense need during the Civil War changed that. In the North, 2 women, Dorothea Dix and Clara Barton went to Washington, D.C. to ask for permission to start a nursing corps, which they did. 2,000 women volunteered. The women had to be at least 30 years old and preferably married or widowed. Clara Barton went on to found the American Red Cross that is still active today. In the South, a woman by the name of Sally Tompkins led the effort to provide nursing care through her own private hospital, which she paid for out of her own fortune. Her hospital cared for more than 1,300 men throughout the course of the war and returned more men to the battlefield than any other hospital. The Civil War was the first time women were allowed to organize themselves in an official capacity and contribute to the war effort. Okay, last section of notes, Civil War field hospitals. Pause the video, copy this down, and continue when you are ready. Now that you have watched this podcast, you should understand the different advantages in weaponry and technology that made the Civil War a new kind of war. Make sure you complete your notes page. Have a great day.